All right. Well, first off, thank you guys for joining today. My name is Casey Harriet. I'm the R3 coordinator for ODWC and National Wild Turkey Federation. And today we are going to be talking
Why would you
about,
shoot?
I'm going to need everybody to mute
You need to
yourselves,
shoot.
please. Okay. Right now we have my IT guy and the migratory game bird biologist here, and he's going to be talking with us a little bit about waterfowl hunting, a little bit of basics, where to hunt, when to hunt, rules, regulations. We also have a game warden here, our resident game warden, Jacob Harriet for Lincoln County. He will be available to ask or answer any questions and to go over a little bit more in depth of the regulations. I will also cover a little bit more in depth on our website of like where places to go hunt. And then we also have another special guest, JD Ridge. He is the biologist for Eufaula, senior biologist for Eufaula, and he will also be available to answer questions at the end. So Paxton is going to go through all of our, he's going to go through his presentation. Jacob Harriet, the game warden, will talk about regulations. I will talk a little bit about places to go, and then we will open it up for questions at the end. If you guys have any questions as we go through this, be sure to type them in the chat box, and then I will field those questions for our experts at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen here and get this presentation going. And I like to hear an audible, okay, I can see this if possible. When I do share it.
We can see it.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Paxton to get started here.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. Casey asked me to come on and talk about, how to hunt ducks. So this is How to Hunt Ducks 101. Go to this agenda. This is just kind of what we're going to go through. We're going to talk about duck numbers, what type of ducks you could expect to see in Oklahoma when you're out hunting, where to hunt. We'll talk about some of the different resources you can use to scout different places and opportunities across the state, and some of our wetland development units that the department manages. We'll talk about some of the best times to go hunting for waterfowl, and then we'll talk about the rules and regulations specific to duck hunting, and just some of the things you can expect to do, and maybe just some suggestions or, duck hunting 101 for the day of the hunt. So this is just a pie chart that I made of the duck harvest percentage in Oklahoma average over the last 3 years. So you can see that, the number one most harvested duck in Oklahoma is mallard, gadwall, and we have green-winged teal, and then just the rest of the puddle ducks. And then divers make up about 10% of our harvest. I just thought this graph would be interesting for, some people that might be first-time hunters. Just, what might you see if you go duck hunting, and maybe how to, formulate your duck hunting spread. The chart on the right is the North American continental population of ducks. You can see that, it ebbs and flows. And in the last, 10 years, we've been in a pretty steep decline of waterfowl in North America. And that's just due to habitat conditions and habitat loss. So when I say habitat conditions, I mean habitat conditions in the duck's main breeding ground, which is mostly the prairie potholes of northern United States and Canada, and then some in the boreal regions. And as far as habitat conditions go, the most important factor there is precipitation. So, just having ponds on the ground for ducks to breed. But I won't stick around on this too long, and I'll just kind of get to some of the methods you might want to use when you're, looking for a place to hunt. So this map on the left-hand side of the screen, I pulled, it's page 1 out of our WMA Atlas. I'm not trying to blow up anybody's hunting spot on this. I just thought that I would kind of use this as an example for, what you were going to look for when you look for duck hunting habitat. So this is just a pretty typical lake in Oklahoma, man-made reservoir where a river spills into it. And at the upstream end of these reservoirs, there's a big alluvial delta, just kind of a marshy area where silt has been deposited, and it makes sort of natural marsh conditions. these areas, shallow water habitat can provide, kind of the ideal duck hunting area. And we have maps of all the lakes with WMAs on them on our website and in this atlas. And we have other resources on our website. I took some screenshots from our webpage. We have our WMA interactive maps. So this will have, a Google Maps type version of the whole state with different layers you can turn on and off, so that you can, see restricted areas, places where food plots are, and then our WDUs are also listed on there. And when I say WDU, I mean Wetland Development Unit. And those are the areas we manage specifically for waterfowl, and I'll talk about those on our next slide. So in addition to our WMAs, we have properties. It's our Oklahoma Land Access Program, where the Wildlife Department leases private land and opens it for public use. So these are kind of divided into a couple different categories, and some of them are just open to all archery and shotgun hunting, where you can drive up there the day of the hunt and go hunt. Some of them are limited access, where you have to reserve your basically you reserve it and get it all to yourself plus one buddy for the day of the hunt. And you can find all that on our OLAP part of our website.
That's where you would where you registered for this event too. It's also on there. You can register through our Go Outdoor calendar.
Cool. And then the next part of this, the screenshot on the bottom right corner, is from the Corps of Engineers website. So they have hunting maps for pretty much all of the large reservoirs in Oklahoma that the Corps of Engineers has constructed over the last 90 years. And that pretty much makes up all the major bodies of water in our state. And they generally have a buffer around them that, is huntable area, water for duck hunting. So that would definitely be something to check out. And you can see how many Corps of Engineer lakes we have in Oklahoma compared to our Texas and Kansas neighbors. The other one that I didn't put on this website that I wanted to mention was the Fish and Wildlife Service National Wildlife Refuges. A lot of them are open to hunting with special restrictions, so you'll want to check their website, and they usually have a pamphlet for each Fish and Wildlife Refuge that has the specific rules and regs for that area. And they're generally a little bit more restrictive based on time of day you can be in there and access points. And sometimes you have to actually keep the pamphlet and sign it on you as your permit. Next, I just want to talk about our wetland development units that we manage across the state. These are areas where we manage them specifically for waterfowl habitat and waterfowl hunters. So there's about 20 across the state. They close at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. They're restricted to non-toxic shot only. So kind of the model behind these are, we take a area bordering a lake or a stream or even a natural basin, kind of like Hackberry or Drummond Flats, and we manage the vegetation so that in the fall, whenever it rains or there's upstream flooding events, that we can close gates and impound water that's kind of designed for waterfowl habitat. And these areas can be a definite duck magnet, and we work hard on them, and our WMA biologists spend a lot of time managing them. We have reports bi-weekly for how these areas look conditions wise. So we'll be posting the first one on Friday and then every other Friday throughout hunting season. And that'll just give status of all of the units in the WDU, and it'll give some general just waterfowl numbers and sort of habitat conditions for the area. I think Casey's just going to check the chat real quick just to make sure we don't have any questions.
Well, I was also going to mute somebody that we're having a little bit of feedback here. So there we go. I'll mute. Oh, handy. Okay, I'll check the chat later. I just wanted to make sure
Okay.
I can meet that person. So is this where we started?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Okay.
And then this is just a map of the state and the WDUs around it. This can be found on our website, and yeah, it can be found on our website under waterfowl hunting. When to hunt, just kind of general stuff. For this duck season, zone 1 and 2 is most of the state, or is pretty much the whole state minus the panhandle. It's November 11th to 26th and December 2nd to the 28th. This is just excludes a 5-day split in between November 26th and December 2nd, and it's gonna be Monday through Friday where duck hunting season is closed. So just make sure that you're not in the field, with duck hunting gear or harvesting ducks during that time.
Why is there a split? Just off the cuff.
Oh, sure. So we're allowed a certain number of days for waterfowl hunting season by the Fish and Wildlife Service. And that split is designed to just kind of, well, for one, give the ducks a resting period, and two, so we can have earlier dates and as well as the later dates.
Gotcha.
And it just kind of helps us spread our season out a little bit to get some different sort of migration diversity, I guess.
Okay.
So, and then for the Panhandle counties, the season looks a little bit different. And that's just because the Panhandle is in a slightly different geographical region and the hunting pressure is different, so that the ducks are managed a little bit different on a flyway scale there. And the season starts on October 7th and it's going to end in January 3rd. So this is the when to hunt slide. So I thought I would throw on just some general good times to hunt, for some newer duck hunters. You kind of want to target, after cold fronts, especially towards the beginning of the season. Those cold fronts will be what sort of brings the ducks down to Oklahoma, their wintering habitat. So, weather events in North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, all the places north of us, once those places start to, freeze up and the accessible water starts to go away and agricultural fields like cornfields start to get snow over them, then those ducks are forced to move down through our state. And then we're usually, pretty good open water conditions throughout the whole season, unless, a major freeze event happens. So a lot of ducks kind of hang out around that freeze thaw line and, can provide some pretty good migrating hunt conditions. And I said when to hunt. So, I mean, if you're hunting on private land in particular, then, manage your hunting pressure. You might not want to hunt it 5 days a week. I mean, if you do it, it'll be likely that you'll kind of see, less bird usage. Ducks are smart. They're migratory. They're going to spend time where they feel safe and where they have resources. So if you're in there, shooting at them 3 or 4 days a week, then you might start to see your success kind of trickle out. And yeah, just while I'm on private land, that there's farm ponds. There's more man-made water in Oklahoma than we ever could have imagined 100 years ago. So with the Corps of Engineer reservoirs and man-made stock ponds across the state, there's a lot of diverse opportunity for waterfowl hunting. This is just a slide for some rules and regulations about duck hunting. So there are two duck species in particular where you can only harvest one of each. This is the pintail, which is going to be on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, and a scaup, which is a diving duck, and it's in the top right-hand portion of the screen. So when you're out hunting for them, you want to be careful and make sure and just know what you're shooting at and pick out an individual bird before you shoot. That way you're not, going over your limit for a specific species of duck. In addition to that, there's, a couple other species that have limited limits. So redhead, canvasback, you can shoot 2 of each of them. You can shoot 3 wood ducks and then 5 mallards, only 2 of which can be hens. Mergansers are included in the total duck limit. And I just figured that was good to know because there used to be a separate merganser limit as opposed to duck limit 3 years ago. So it's changed since then, and just a warning there. And then as far as the permit requirements for duck hunting, you need a HIP permit, which is the harvest information permit. And that is where kind of the root of that first pie chart that I showed you and how we start to gather that sort of harvest data for different migratory bird species. So it'll ask you how many ducks you killed last year, how many coots you killed, and that's one of the only data streams we have for migratory bird harvest throughout the Central Flyway. The next requirement you need is a duck stamp. That's a federal duck stamp. So you buy that stamp, and the money from that is used to purchase and maintain property in the breeding regions or the prairie pothole region where, you know, ducks and geese breed. And 99 cents on the dollar there is used to protect duck breeding habitat. So I know some people might look and say that's kind of a steep price for a permit, but it's to protect the resource and make sure that it's there for us to use, you know, going forward. And then if you don't have a lifetime license, you're going to need a state waterfowl stamp, hunting license, and then something that's a little bit different for migratory bird hunting is that youth season is defined by 15 and under, you know, where, you know, you can go youth deer hunting at 16. So that's just a distinction that I wanted to make. And then this last slide is just kind of day of the hunt type stuff. So first thing you're going to want to do is, you know the rules and laws regarding what you're going to go harvest. The second one I said find the X. So this could probably be a whole slide in itself, but all the decoys and calling and everything in the world isn't going to really matter unless you're where the ducks already want to be. So I would just suggest scout, and then if you see a lot of ducks, let's say you're scouting at noon on a Friday before duck hunting season's opening the next day, and you see a lot of ducks landing in one spot, well, they might not be landing there at 6 a.m. the next day. So kind of scouting, you know, based on what time you're going to be hunting is pretty important. And then you know, just not going in somewhere blind is pretty helpful too. It can be kind of a mess trying to boat in or hike in somewhere a couple miles if you've never seen it in the daylight. And then the next thing I said, and this is mainly like for an opening morning or a busy, you know, migration Saturday sort of hunt, but get there early. There's going to be a lot of people if it's a pretty good duck hunting spot and if it's on public land. And that leads me to the next point, and that's have a couple backup spots in mind. If you go scout somewhere, maybe have 2 or 3 spots picked out. That way, you know, your hunt's not ruined if you don't get to your first spot and somebody's already set up there. The next point is hide well. By the time ducks get to Oklahoma, they've been shot at in, you know, 5 or 6 other states before they get here, before our season's even open. So, but they're getting pretty smart to the game. They're figuring it out, and you're going to want to have your face covered and your boat covered up, and make sure you're not just out there sitting on the bank and they're staring right at you. And that'll help. And so that kind of leads me to the next point, and that's wait for them to get in range. They're much more likely to get close enough to shoot if you're hidden pretty well. And it helps the other hunters in the area if you're not just shooting at them when they're, you know, 100 feet in the air, because 1, that educates the birds, and 2, it kind of limits opportunity for other people in the area. And I'm sure if you duck hunt long enough, you'll hear people complaining about sky blasters. So take responsible shots and, you know, clean up your shotgun holes. That's kind of, I don't know. It's just kind of distasteful to show up to a spot and there's, you know, a lot of shotgun holes that you're sitting on and stuff like that. And it's actually in our rule change proposal to make shotgun holes littering. I don't know. Jacob can
talk more
correct me on that.
Just more ethical overall, as we have responsibility to take care of the land that we're allowed to hunt, and if we don't take care of it correctly, we'll lose it. So especially on OAP and properties like that, when it's private land that they are allowing us to hunt on. So very important to pick up your stuff. If you see somebody else have their litter there, pick it up before you leave. It's just all about being ethical and responsible hunter.
Sure. And so I mean,
that is correct.
What's that, Jacob?
That is correct. The shotgun holes will be considered litter.
Okay.
Okay, good.
And then, yeah, so this is just some final thoughts. Don't be intimidated. I mean, it's kind of a intimidating process to, go to a lake and, scout it out and go do it. But you never know what's there until you're there in the morning and see if the ducks are flying. I mean, some of my most memorable hunts are days when we, got very few ducks. So it's a trial and error process, especially when you're first getting into it. I mean, nobody's ever, even the most seasoned duck hunter goes out and has days when they don't get any ducks. That's why it's called hunting. Take care of our public land. We have guys that work really hard maintaining our wildlife areas, and if they have to spend time, cleaning up trash and stuff like that, that takes away from opportunities to, make our areas better, and then try to take someone new hunting. So.
Also, I like to talk a little bit about gear. What would you say your baseline gear? What do you need to get out there in the duck woods? You need a shotgun. You need good camo, a duck call.
I wouldn't say camo. You could have
Or
an earth colored
There you go.
flannel, and that would probably do
Okay.
just as good as some of the, most expensive hunting sweatshirts.
Yeah.
So
Decoys, would you say that's pretty much a must to draw ducks in?
yeah, unless you find a good line where they're flying and you could pass shoot them. But yeah, decoys are important. As many as you can carry comfortably.
And I need to have a dog, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to. Sometimes I know Jacob Harriet grew up being the dog. He was the one swimming. You're really lagged up right now, by the way, Jacob. You're frozen, so might work on getting to a better service area.
I'll try.
You'll try what?
Yeah, I just wanted to add waders and hip boots, or hip boots are probably important, based on the area that you're hunting.
Yes. And then a duck call.
If you're new to it, it might help you to leave that at home. But.
Yeah. Do some practicing beforehand. You'll really annoy everybody else in your house. Try to do that in the car while you're not with anybody else.
Sure.
I was just thinking that was some of the basics. Like duck hunting in general has a little bit more requirements than like dove hunting or something. A little bit more lax when you need to be a little bit more concealed, a little bit more setup going in, and then having a dog is always a must. Having the waders, etc., because you're hunting water. So,
sure. And there's some other resources on the internet. I'm sure there's hundreds of guys on YouTube that have, what do I need to go duck hunting videos? And so I was just trying to steer it more towards
absolutely,
the where to and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I have a lot of questions here, but I do want Jacob to go. If maybe if you turn your video off, we would get a better service, but you can go over a little bit more of the regulations if we can, and then kind of touch on anything or what you've experienced out in the field, what common mistakes of hunters. I'll try to go in and show. Paxton did a good job of showing where to hunt, but I'm going to show you where that's at on our website so you can navigate that. So if you would like to go ahead and kind of elaborate on any regulations or things you see in the field, please do so.
Okay, yeah. Can you guys hear me all right, or am I still real laggy?
Your video is laggy, but we can hear you so far.
Okay. I can turn my video off. Nobody wants to look at me anyways. All right. Okay. So yeah, I usually start these things off of, make sure you have permission wherever you're going. Make sure you have permission to go. That's the number one call I get is trespassing. It is very hard to sneak in onto a property and shoot ducks without somebody knowing about it. So make sure your property that you're at, or if you're hunting public land, make sure you're where you're supposed to be and doing it how you're supposed to do it. Other than that, license wise, so waterfowl hunting requires a lot more than just, deer hunting or something like that. It's because it's managed federally and by the state. So to hunt waterfowl, Paxton, you did a good job of covering all this, and I'm just going to kind of breeze over it. But you'll need your hunting license, you'll need your federal waterfowl stamp, Oklahoma waterfowl stamp, and your HIT permit to hunt ducks. On top of that, you'll need a plug in your shotgun. So your shotgun cannot hold any more than 3 shells. So that's 1 in the chamber, 2 in the magazine. If it holds any more than that, you're in violation of state law. That's a common thing we see. Don't just expect that when you buy a shotgun, it comes with a plug, because most of them do not. Uh, a plug is just usually something that goes in the tube that stops the shells from going in, is all it is. I've actually caught people in the field that have caught wind of me watching them, thinking that I was on the road, and I was actually behind them in the woods watching. And I watched them try to whittle sticks and shove them in their gun so that it would count as a plug. Don't do that. Go into the field with a plug. You can buy actual plugs. That's what I would recommend. In a pinch, you can make one work. But make sure that gun's plugged. Uh, so you have your licensing and all that stuff. You know, waterfowl ID is very important. We have different birds that have different, different limits to them. So like Paxton said, he went over it all, but say you could shoot 5 mallards, but you can only shoot 2 hen mallards in that 5. Same with those pintails and the scops. You can only shoot 1 redhead and redheads and canvasbacks. You can only shoot 2. So you need to be able to ID those birds. One thing I see a lot is you need to be able to tell what a duck is. There's a lot of people that are shooting birds that are not ducks, thinking that they're ducks. That is also in violation. So be careful of that. Make sure of what your target, what's beyond it. Duck hunting can be tricky, especially to a new hunter, because you're shooting at a moving target. They fly pretty fast. It can be hard to ID those, but if you do some practice beforehand, you'll be in really good shape in that regard. Like they said, pick up your trash. Those shotgun shells get flung everywhere. Pick them up. You do have to have a way to retrieve your birds. So think of that. I see lots of people, and I've done it. Like Casey said, I used to be the bird dog. We would harvest birds at the end of the hunt. We'd start a fire and we'd go wade out in the water, get freezing cold, grab them and come back and warm up by the fire. And that's just how we did it. We didn't have a dog. We didn't have a boat. I've seen lots of people with a fishing pole and a treble hook. That's pretty beneficial. You just cast out there, grab them. You do have to make an honest attempt to find those birds. So you can't just shoot a bird, say, oh, it's out in the middle of the water, I can't get it. As a hunter, you need to be responsible and take care of getting those birds and using those birds properly. We don't want to waste them. So make sure you're doing an honest attempt at that. You cannot use any sort of live decoys. So if you have, a pet duck or something like that, you can't put that in the water and use that as a decoy. You actually have to have all domestic waterfowl removed 10 days prior to hunting. So no live animals for 10 days before you hunt it. Also, you cannot bait. So every year we work some pretty big cases where people are baiting waterfowl. They're dumping corn or milo seed or something into the water to attract the birds. That's illegal. You can't do that. And I believe it's 14 days after all bait is removed to hunt that location.
Hey, Jacob.
So don't. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but on that point, we had a question in the comments that where a guy said, I have a property with a pond that I hunt deer on primarily. How far from that pond should I place my deer feeder to keep from hunting over bait?
You want to place that feeder where the ducks are not eating that corn. So if I'm the game warden and I'm checking you and you say, yeah, I'm hunting deer there, but it's throwing corn in the water and that's attracting birds, then that I would consider that in violation. Basically, do it to the point that you're not feeding ducks, you're just feeding the deer. So get that feeder away from it. That's the
So there's
safest
not like
bet.
a set yardage or anything.
There's not a set. It's not like turkey where you have to be 100 yards from bait. You're not allowed to hunt baited areas. So if those birds are feeding on artificial bait that you put out there, you'd be in violation.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yep, no problem. So bag limit wise, you harvest your birds. A lot of times this is a social thing. You got a few buddies going with you. If say, me and Paxton are hunting and Paxton decides that, hey man, I don't have time. Can you just take these birds and clean them for me? Well, he needs to write me a receipt for those birds. So basically say, I, Paxton, give Jacob with our license number on there, this many ducks, 2 mallards and, 2 gadwalls, and I'm giving him these birds to clean. Well, then I have legal documentation for having those birds. If he didn't do that and a game warden checked me, I would be over limit. So all those birds, you need to, have documentation on where they came from. They need to have that documentation until you get to your place of final destination. So, if you're leaving a bunch of birds, at your buddy's house or whatever, make sure there's a, sorry, I'm trying to read chats as they pop up. Make sure that they, have some sort of documentation saying where those birds are. You can also not completely clean those birds in the field because we have specific limits on the birds and by species. So you can't just breast out a duck and then come out with just your breasted duck. You have to be able to tell what kind of bird that is. So make sure you're doing that. Trying to think of other things legal wise, just to think about. So shooting hours is 1/2 hour before sunrise to official sunset. So it's not like deer hunting where you get an extra 30 minutes after the sun goes down. You have to stop at sunset. Um, if you're making comments about the fire coming out of your shotgun, you're probably too late. So make sure you're doing that. And we're pretty strict on that. Like I said, duck hunting, shooting shotguns, it's pretty hard to hide that. If you're shooting late, I get lots of calls. Hey, these guys are shooting over. It's, we work a lot of cases like that. The reason for that is those birds are going back to roost. And if you blow them off that roost, then they're kind of, their game plan for the night is messed up and they're more vulnerable to predators, and you can just blow them out of the area, which we don't want to do. No duck hunter wants to blow out all the birds in the area. So protect those roost sites. Uh, you know, legal means to take, shotgun is the main thing. You got to have non-toxic shot. So you can't use lead shot for birds. You can't even be in possession of lead shot. So if you're taking your dove vest out there with you, make sure you get all that lead shot out of your vest before you go. It needs to be some sort of steel or tungsten or some sort of non-toxic shot. All your boxes of ammo will have that on there. Wanton waste, like I said, you have to make an honest attempt to get the birds. For whatever reason, we get lots of calls about it. People will shoot ducks and then, something will happen. They won't clean them and they'll just go dump those ducks. If you don't clean the bird, for one, it's illegal because you're wasting that animal. You can lose your hunting license for doing that. And nobody wants to, be the guy that just goes out and shoots stuffs and waste it. Take full advantage of the resource that we have and use it properly. And then two, dumping it inappropriately. It's just like dumping a deer. That's illegal as well, and you can lose your hunting license for that. So you cannot possess live birds. So if you shoot a bird and injure it, you need to immediately put that animal down. You can't just let it swim around for a live decoy. You need to immediately and humanely put that thing down. You cannot take a 22 with you to put those animals down. You have to use your shotgun with legal non-toxic shot. If you get lucky enough to shoot a band, we have a website that you can go to and search that band number, get a lot of cool data off that. So just remember that if you shoot one, you can look that up. And if you can't find that website, feel free to reach out to your local warden and we can get you to that website. But it's kind of neat, that our waterfowl folks do a lot of hard work to ban these things and track them. And you can get a lot of really neat data, as far as where that bird has been. So it's always neat if you get a band, those are kind of trophies to waterfowl hunters. So remember that. I think that's all I have on the regulation side, but I would like to just make some comments on what I see in the field. So normally when I check waterfowl hunters, it is extremely rare for me to see somebody waterfowl hunting and walk out there and check them. If I'm checking waterfowl hunters, I'm going to sit and watch and wait and make sure they're doing everything by the book. I make a lot of cases like that. The people that I'm checking do not expect to be checked where they're at, and they think nobody is watching. So they do some very silly things when that happens. I've caught people shooting birds and stuffing them in the weeds or stomping them in the mud. That is not the appropriate way to do it. So just remember, somebody's always watching. Follow the laws, do it right. If you don't understand the law, call a game warden before you get in the field and make sure you're right on it. Like I said, duck hunters are my favorite people to check. They're easy to find and they're easy to watch. And it is very common for me to find violations in the waterfowl world. So don't have violations and we'll have a nice conversation. A lot of times if I'm watching guys and they're doing everything right and they look legitimate to me, I might even leave that group and go check somebody that I think is, doing more violations. So just because you don't get checked by a game warden doesn't mean they haven't watched you. So just be cautious of that. Take care of your stuff. Make sure of where you're shooting at. Be respectful to people around you. These guns are really loud. I get lots of complaints from neighbors saying that people are shooting on their property and stuff, and it's usually legal duck hunters shooting, but they're just not used to that. So if you have a neighbor or something like that around, be in good contact with them. Tell them, hey, just letting you know I'm going to go hunting in the morning. If they don't like it, they can not like it all they want. As long as you're legally hunting, you can do it. It's illegal for them to interfere with your hunt, but just be respectful and paint hunters in a good light to them. Other than that, that's about all I got. Our seasons for ducks are pretty simple. We have that split in that Paxton talked about. It'll open up the 11th and go through the 26th. We'll have that break and let them calm down a little bit. And then December 2nd through January 28th, it'll kick off again. Great time to get out. It's a lot of fun. Like Paxton said, you know, you don't have to shoot a lot of ducks to have a lot of fun. If you take a good buddy with you, you're going to have a great time regardless of how many ducks you shoot. So just get out there and enjoy it. Also, don't overthink it. I've killed a lot of ducks without decoys, without calls. If you're where the ducks want to be, you'll have a good hunt. It doesn't matter if you spend it, you know, $400 on decoys or however much you spend on decoys. It's not necessary if you can do the scouting ahead of time. All that stuff helps, but it's not necessary. Uh, remember, you can't shoot them out of a moving vehicle or a moving boat. And I think that's about it. So I'm going to shut up. And if you guys have questions, I am happy to answer them.
Awesome.
Sure. I was just going to respond to Jonathan had a question about, he said, what are the ducks in Oklahoma you cannot harvest? He had some black belly whistling ducks in his pond and was wondering if there were any others. So the ones that we have specific limits for, like Scott, pintail, redhead, canvasback, wood duck, and mallard, those are the only special limits. So if you ended up on a hunt and got into a bunch of black-bellied whistling ducks, then it's fair game. Those are kind of on expanding their range every year. So, you know, we could expect to see more in the future.
Okay.
Yeah,
And there's usually a sea duck or two that gets harvested across the state. So that's kind of interesting. They just kind of get lost on their migration.
Yeah, I might have confused them a little bit too when I said make sure of what you're shooting. So what I meant by don't shoot birds you're not supposed to shoot, I'm talking like blue herons and stuff like that. You know, hawks, you know, Tweety birds, cardinals, stuff like that. I see those shot a lot. So just make sure you know what you're shooting at. I wasn't saying, you know, there's certain ducks you can't shoot, but those birds that are very much not a duck. When you tell me that you thought it was a duck and it was a great blue herring, probably not going to believe you.
Happened before. I remember you telling me about it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I before we go any further, I just want to make sure I share real fast, and then we'll field all the rest of these questions. I want to show you guys where you can go hunt, where you can navigate our website to hunt, I should say. So where's my tab? Okay, I'm gonna have to switch over. We'll do this one, and then I know. Let's see. Won't let me. I have to go to, no, that's not it. Trying to get to my, are you guys seeing? Okay, let's try this one more time. I'm trying to get to the dock. Okay, we'll go to wildlife, and then I have to go share after this because I couldn't get to that. Okay, so give me 1 second. I'm gonna try this all over again. Okay, so we're on wildlifedepartment.com. Like this is, I'll show you our homepage. And then you go to the hunting tab right here, and then you go down to where to hunt. And Paxton showed a lot of information, our WMA interactive maps, but you can see right here, the WMA list, the interactive maps, the Oklahoma Land Access Program, and the commercial hunt area list, non-ambulatory access. That is where you go to find more in detail. So I just wanted to show y'all how you would break that down. This is the interactive map. We don't necessarily have to look at that. However, that's where you go on our website to find them. And I just wanted to show that real fast. There's so many questions that I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I did say that I would cover it. So I want to make sure I do so. So I will unshare my screen. Oh, stop sharing. I'll unshare my screen, and then we're gonna this recording, or this will be recorded and put on our Outdoor Oklahoma YouTube channel. There's about 2 or 3 different questions that asked about that, and so I will get that up within 24 hours. It takes a while to go through a little bit of the edits of the before and after that I have to do, but it will be up on our Learn to Hunt playlist. And there's lots of other classes on there as well for your someone asked about their wildlife management class because they're a teacher, and there's a slew of good educational content on there. So we'll go down and look at a lot of these questions now. So give me a second while we field these here. How do teal play into the bag limit numbers?
So you can shoot 6 teal. You can fill your whole bag with teal. There's no limits on specific species there.
Okay. Is a fisherman on a boat considered hunter harassment?
Well, you, Jacob.
So to be hunter harassment, they have to be going out of their way to interfere with your hunt, and you have to be hunting lawfully. So if you have any sort of violation in your hunt, you cannot press the charge. You have to be a legal hunter. What I tell folks is, if they're going out of their way to harass you, take a video of them, kind of get documentation of it. It's hard for me to come in after the fact and say, yeah, that guy was fishing and he's harassing you, because he's just saying, well, I was just fishing. I mean, I didn't know anything of it. But if he's fishing, like saying, hey, get away, ducks. Hey, you're not going to kill anything with me here. Absolutely, that's harassment. If you can get that on video, that's great. If not, we can do some voluntary statement type stuff and get that. Also, in that regard, say you're out on the water, you're hunting, and a guy on a boat comes up. I have to be able to figure out who that guy on the boat was, because more than likely, whenever I'm coming from, it's probably an hour away. It seems like every time I get called out on something. So be very descriptive of what he is wearing, what his boat looks like, all that stuff, so we can find that guy and talk to him. If I go up and talk to him and he's like, yeah, I hate people that duck hunt. I just like fishing. That just builds the case of that he was going out of his way to harass you. So just try to get as much documentation you can. Make sure you know what the guy looks like, and we'll do our best to get that prosecuted if you believe you're being harassed.
That one, the drought.
Sure. Yeah. Kenneth asked how the drought in central Oklahoma has affected the duck migration in the last 5 years. What's the forecasted migration this year? So there's a lot of factors that go into that. That's a real tough one. So the drought in central Oklahoma the last couple of years has, hurt in terms of habitat availability when the ducks are here. It hasn't really hurt their, or changed their migration. If there's available habitat in Oklahoma, this is along their migration route, so they will stay here. But we are considered a flyover state to some level, and if we don't have habitat, then they're just going to bypass and find that. That's what makes migratory birds such a successful group of animals. And then he said, what's the forecasted migration this year? So that kind of goes back to habitat availability in the state, and duck numbers overall, and the duck numbers are slightly above long-term average, but nothing alarming. So with rain, pretty average rainfall and stuff in central Oklahoma and across the state, even some above average rainfall in the west, it's looks like it's going to be a pretty good year for duck hunting.
I've seen more ducks early season on properties that have good habit than I have the last couple of years. Just anecdotal observations in my county.
Cool.
Children that are under 15, what are they required to have to hunt?
Nothing. If they're under 15, they're exempt from the hunting license. They're exempt from the all your federal permits and everything. So just take them hunting. They're good to go. Still have to have a plug in their gun. But other than that, they're good to go. They have to be with somebody who's been through hunter education that's at least 18 years old.
Okay. If my kids have a tribal license and are inside the tribe's boundaries, do they just need that license with HIP and duck stamp?
Oh, that all depends on the tribe. If you're on tribal land here in my county, you still have to have all your state requirements. It doesn't really matter. Some of the bigger tribes have their own licenses and own regulations now. If they're on one of those tribes, you can. The best thing to do is check with that specific tribe and see what they require of you. Like I said, in my county, it's pretty much just state regulations everywhere.
Okay. Another regulation question, is shooting out of a moving kayak considered shooting out of a moving boat?
The law says motorized. So as long as the motor's off, I think you're in good shape. Now, I do not recommend paddling through ducks and jumping them up and shooting them. Let me verify that it says motorized. I want to say it says stationary too, but let me verify that real quick. I know it cannot be motorized. I think kayak, you're good, but I believe there's a stationary word in that law.
Thank you, JD Ridge, for fielding a lot of these questions. We got quite a crowd today, so we got lots of questions. Must a boat be anchored to be legal? I guess that's something that you can also look at too while you're looking up.
It doesn't have to be anchored. I believe it just says stationary, but I'm going to double check that real quick.
So I think we could probably answer that one. We did.
Oh yeah. So he said, I plan on taking my son out. He's 12. Does he need a hunting license? And do they each get their own limit, or is the limit based on licenses? So If he's 12 years old, he doesn't need any licenses, and you each get your own separate duck limit. Your dog does not get its own separate duck limit.
Sure, they would like that though. Let's see. Ridge, if you want to pipe in on any point and discuss anything while Jacob's looking up this stuff, more than welcome to. How about you answer this one? What size shot would you recommend, JD?
Generally speaking, anywhere from, if we're talking about steel shot, anywhere from 6, 5, 4, 3 is good for ducks over decoys. You know, it depends on if you're goose hunting, obviously you want bigger stuff. If you're using other non-toxics such as tungsten, then you can use smaller shot sizes to get, you know, the necessary energy and penetration. So it's variable, but generally speaking, your 3 or 4 steel is a good load over decoys for ducks.
After you shoot a duck, what should be done to process it before you get home? As in, like, what do you, well, I do know there's requirements for show of species, right? Like,
yeah, so you have to have evidence of what the bird is on there, usually a wing or a head. Most people do not process their birds until they get home. A duck is not like a deer, as you know, the guts are going to get super hot and spoil the meat. The way their body cavities are made, they're pretty well separated from that. So you can wait longer before you process them without having an issue, I guess is what I'm trying to say. A lot of people will completely pluck the birds, leave the skin on, or you can, you know, breast them out. You can take legs. It kind of just depends on what you want to do, but there's not a immediate need to try to clean that bird quickly in the field, if that makes sense.
Wouldn't that put them in a bind if you were to check them and figure out what their limits were if they had something that wasn't identifiable?
They have, if they clean a bird in the field, it has to have its wing attached still.
Okay.
So if you wanted to gut the bird in the field, you could do that. You know, if you're going to pluck it. If you're just breasting it out, it's usually easier just to, you know, do it all at home.
Yeah, which would be all hard.
Or back at camp.
Yeah. Okay.
But on that, so the law on the boating is, it shall be, no person shall take migratory birds from or by means of any boat or sailboat unless the motor has been completely shut off and the sail furled and its progression thereof has ceased. So I think in a kayak you're good. You know, that being said, I would not be paddling into ducks and shooting them. You could even, you know, if you're on public land or something like that, you can get into some hunter harassment there or wildlife harassment if you're just paddling around, jumping birds up all the time. So be careful with that. But it doesn't have to be a stationary kayak.
There's a question earlier about recommendations on duck dogs, or I don't know if we don't have any really experience in that, but JD might be able to speak on that. I'll try to find the question specifically.
All I would say to that, I wouldn't name anybody specifically, but I would try to stick with a reputable breeder when you're talking about labs in particular, because they have some issues that you could avoid. You don't want to just answer an ad in the paper and go get, you know, a quote unquote registered lab. You may or may not get what you want. I'm not saying you can't get a good dog that way, but there's a reason you're paying more through a reputable breeder. And that's, they can have eye issues, they can have hip issues. You just have a better chance of avoiding some of those problems, from what I understand. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend anybody specific, because I don't think this is the proper forum, but do your homework is what I would recommend.
Yep. What are your recommendations to store a duck for mounting, and what regulations pertain to that?
So the regulations on that would just go to possession limit. I do not recommend, you know, you shooting a bird and not having your licenses and putting it in your freezer. But if you're a legal hunter, you know, we can look up that you have a valid license. If it takes you a while to get that thing to a taxidermist, that's fine. If it was me personally, I would put, you know, time and date of when I harvested that bird. And then, you know, you just have to watch out for your possession limits. You don't want to be over any sort of possession limit. I've never heard of anybody getting in a bind over that unless they really deserved it. But just kind of honor that possession limit and be respectful of that. And, you know, just keep documentation on when you shot that bird.
Okay. Just waiting for any more questions to roll in.
I saw Kelvin was on here earlier. Does he have
Oh.
anything good to say? First time duck hunters? Yeah, he probably tuned out.
I think there was a question on lifetime licenses and what you need from that. So a lifetime license covers almost everything except for your federal stuff. So if you have a lifetime license, you're wanting to waterfowl hunt, you need to have your federal duck stamp and then your HIP permit. And like I said, that HIP permit's free. It's just it's a survey, but it's very important to do that. But that would be all you need for a lifetime license.
We get a lot of questions for deer of like, if I own my property, what all do I need to hunt ducks on my own property? Same thing.
Yeah. So if you are the landowner, you're exempt from the hunting license and the Oklahoma waterfowl stamp and the HIP permit. You'd be exempt from that, but that's only on your property that you own. It can't be your dad's property or your seventh cousin removes property. It has to be your property. You need to be on that deed.
Can someone define pond hopping or like puddle busting, whatever they call it, when you jump from pond to pond? Like there's I know a lot of people can use that strategy on like OLAP properties and stuff to, you know, when you don't have a dog, you don't have decoys, that's a good way to get some deer or a duck.
Yeah, that's the hungry man's way of hunting. Basically, pond jumping is just you figure out where ducks are, you go somewhere where you can sneak into range, you hop up, harvest some birds. It's completely legal. There's nothing illegal about it as long as you have permission to be there and you're a legal hunter. You can do that, and it's pretty effective. As a kid, we did a lot of that because we didn't have any of the fancy decoys or calls or anything like that.
Yeah, there's a question that just popped up. Thanks, Jacob. He said, if you have a HIP in Texas, do you need another one for Oklahoma? And the answer is yes. You need one for each state that you hunt in. And whenever you answer it, it'll ask you how many ducks you harvested, and that is for the state that you're filling the permit out in. And then someone asked, do you need a Oklahoma waterfowl permit if you have a lifetime license? You need duck stamp and HIP permit, but you don't need to buy an Oklahoma duck stamp if you have a lifetime.
Yeah, you got to have the federal one, but the state one is covered by your lifetime. Basically, the lifetime can't cover federal permits, which is what the HIP and the federal permit are.
The HIP and the federal duck stamp. Yeah. Well, we're wrapping up here. If anybody has any last minute questions, please type them in now, because if we don't ask them now, you guys, or if you think of more, you can definitely shoot me an email and I can field the questions to our experts and find out for you. But this has been a great session. We've had a lot of good interaction and a lot of good speakers. So thank you guys and the experts involved in this. Our next class will be next Wednesday. It's going to be rifle with our big game biologist. So be sure to tune in for that. And if you guys are lucky enough to get some ducks, we have a new feature called the tailgate on our website. And it's a place for you guys to upload your harvest photos so we can feature them. So we would love to see all that. We have 2 more questions and then I'm gonna have to wrap up here. If you're on your own property and a pond that is part of your property and part of on another landowner's, can you hunt the whole pond or just what's on your side?
You have to respect your property line. So
Okay.
if your neighbor is good with it, that's great. But if it's private property, it's water on a private property, then it's privately owned. So just be respectful of the property line. I think I saw the next question on navigable rivers. Could you read that off, please?
Yeah, are navigable rivers huntable if following the laws of the area?
So I have no navigable rivers in my area at all. I believe the only one in the state is the Arkansas River. So I get lots of questions on I have the North Canadian, the Cimarron, and Deep Fork in my county. You cannot hunt those. It's privately owned. The water is owned by the state, but anytime that you touch soil, you are trespassing it, because that's privately owned. So even underneath the water, the soil on the bottom is private property. Don't try to do that unless you have permission from the landowner. You're going to get yourself in a bind and get a lot of complaints. Most of my rivers, go ahead.
Sorry, and I was just gonna give a plug for using those mapping resources because like the Arkansas River Channel, there's WMAs and Fish and Wildlife Service refuges that encompass the navigation channel where it would make that stretch huntable. Where there's also private stretches of the river, so you're gonna just have to dig into the maps. Onyx is a good resource, but I wouldn't use that as a fact. The Fish and Wildlife Service maps and our ODWC maps on our website will be a good place to start for that.
I kind of on that topic too, just one last thing. So everybody calls me on these Oklahoma government reservoirs, which is just NRCS, soil conservation district. They made all these ponds, back 50 years ago. Everybody thinks that those are public. They are not. They're privately owned. So if you see a body of water that says Oklahoma government body of water or reservoir site, 31 or whatever, that's not public access. That's private. If it does not say that it is public and you can hunt it, do not try it because more than likely it is private. Our state is 97% private. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you have permission before you go out there.
Okay. All right. 1 o'clock on the dot. I'm going to have to call this one. I should appreciate everybody tuning in today. Thank you. And this will be recorded, like I said, and posted on our YouTube channel. So if you missed out, or if you know someone that missed out, or you want to share this content, make sure that you go to our YouTube channel. It'll be under Learn to Hunt playlist. Thank you guys again for joining today. And thank you again to our speakers and our experts that joined.
Good luck this weekend. Thanks.